Welcome to today's numeracy tutorial. Our learning objective today is calculate area using multiplication. So far we understand that area is best measured in squares and that we can find areas by counting squares and half squares. We will develop our mathematical skills further today, learning that areas can be calculated using multiplication. As always, we'll get ready for our lesson with a 5-question brain gym. Get ready to warm up. Here are your 5 questions. Pause the video now and have a go. Question 1. Area is the space taken up by a closed shape. We can count the squares inside this shape to discover the area is equal to 9 squares. Question 2 gives us a little bit of division revision. I can calculate the quotient using formal written method, 87 divided by 5. I begin calculating with the greatest place value when I divide. So, how many groups of 5 tens can be made from 8 tens? Well, we know it's 1. I need to exchange the remaining 3 tens for 1s. So now I've got 37 1s. Next, how many groups of 5 1s can be made from 37 1s? I know that 7 groups of 5 is equal to 35. So I record that above the 1s digit. I write the remainder with or 2. 87 divided by 5 is equal to 17 remainder 2. Question 3 is a multiplication calculation. 26 multiplied by 4. And that is equal to 104. Question 4 gives us practice rounding to the nearest hundred. I know that 3,456 is between 3,400 and 3,500. Because I'm rounding to the nearest hundred, I look at the tens digit to help me decide which hundred the number is closest to. I can see the tens digit is 5. 5 is always high, so I'm going to round up. 3,456 is nearer to 3,500, so it rounds to 3,500. Question 5, as always, is a time question. Look at the clock and write the time in words and in digital format. Well, we can see the minute hand is pointing to 10. This tells me that the time is going to be minutes to the next hour, and it's going to be 10 minutes to the next hour, because numbers on a clock face are separated by 5-minute intervals. The time in words is 10 minutes to 2. We record this as 1:50 in digital time. Digital time is always written left to right, the current hour, ... minutes past the start of the current hour. Now we are ready to focus on our learning objective. Building on from our previous tutorial, today we are going to find areas using multiplication. Let's use the grid to help us understand how to write units of area. We can see, if we look at the top right hand side of the grid, that we have some labels. That tells us that each of those squares in the grid are in fact squares, because all the sides are 1 centimetre long. What's the area of one of these small squares? Have a think. We can see the lengths of the sides of the square, and we can see that the area of the square is 1 square. But how do we actually calculate the area? To calculate the area, we need to multiply the base times the height, or the length multiplied by the width. 1 centimetre multiplied by 1 centimetre is equal to 1 centimetre, but it's equal to 1 centimetre squared because we're dealing with area. How do we write 1 centimetre squared? We write 1 centimetre for centimetres, and then that small 2 to the right and just above the centimetre. 1 centimetre squared. That's a unit of area. All units of area need to have that small 2 slightly above and to the right of the units. In this case, centimetres. Here we have a rectangle shown on a very similar grid to the one we've just seen, because we can see in the top right hand corner we've got the labels. It tells us that each square is 1 centimetre long and high. Therefore, the area of each square is 1 centimetre squared. How are we going to find the area of this rectangle? We can see that the rectangle has 3 rows. There are 3 rows. In each row, there are 6 squares. Therefore, there are 18 squares altogether. We could of course count up the squares because there aren't that many squares. Counting to 18 doesn't take us that long. However, we can see we have 3 lots of 6. 3 rows of 6, which is equal to 18. We know that from our times tables. Therefore, the area of the rectangle is 18 centimetres squared because each of the squares is 1 centimetre squared. How do we write that? 18 centimetres and then that little 2. We'd read that as 18 centimetres squared. Have a think about completing those sentences about that rectangle. Pause the video and have a go. Well, in this case there are 3 rows. We can count them. 1, 2, 3. There are 5 squares in each row. So that means there are 15 squares altogether. Our multiplication is 3 multiplied by 5 and we know that equals 15. The area of the rectangle is 15 centimetres squared, which we write like 15 centimetres with a small 2 just above and to the right of the centimetre. So far we've examined rectangles on a grid. This was to help us see the area squares inside the shape, but we don't need the grid if we can work out the lengths of the rectangle. Let's help Flora work out the length and width of this rectangle so that she can calculate the area. We can see there are 4 square units in a row. Now we know one of the lengths of the rectangle is 4 centimetres. Drake has been helpful, telling Flora that there are 3 rows. This means the width of the rectangle is 3 centimetres. We can use these measures to find its area. We have here a side length of 3 centimetres and 4 centimetres. Therefore, the area of this rectangle will be 3 multiplied by 4. We can imagine the rows of squares inside the rectangle if we wanted to. Just like Flora is. 3 times 4 is equal to 12 centimetres. Of course, because we're dealing with area, it needs to be centimetres squared. The area is equal to 12 centimetres squared and we record this with our little 2 to the right and just above the unit of measure. Hi Greg. Greg is trying to calculate the area of this rectangle. Pause the video now so that you can have a go. Greg is able to see there are 5 square units in one row. And Drake is back to tell us that there are 4 rows. He's been extra helpful today, reminding us that we can calculate area using multiplication. He says I will multiply the adjacent lengths to find the area. Well now, what does that word adjacent mean? Adjacent means beside or next to. In other words, using this rectangle, the length is adjacent to the width. We have here a side length of 5 centimetres and a width of 4 centimetres because there are 4 rows. Remember, each square is 1 centimetre high. Therefore, the area of this rectangle will be 4 multiplied by 5, which we know is equal to 20. The area of the rectangle is 20 centimetre squared. And we write this like so. The area is equal to 20 cm for centimetres and the little 2 just above and to the right. We have here a rectangle with a side length of 3 centimetres and a side length of 7 centimetres. We know that we can calculate the area by multiplying the 2 adjacent sides. Therefore, the area of this rectangle will be 3 multiplied by 7. We could imagine the rows of squares inside the rectangle if we wanted to, but 3 times 7 is equal to 21. 21 centimetres squared, of course, because we're dealing with the area. It's always going to be a squared unit when it comes to area. Have a think about the area of this rectangle. Pause the video now and have a go. We are told this rectangle has a length of 27 centimetres and a width of 4 centimetres. To find the area using multiplication, we simply multiply the adjacent lengths. 4 multiplied by 27. That is equal to 108 centimetres. Of course, we're dealing with area, so it's going to be 108 centimetres squared. Area must always be written as a squared unit. The unit in this case is centimetres, so the area is centimetres squared. Here we have another shape. We are told it's a square. The strokes on each side tells us that each of these sides are the same length. And we're told one side length is 9 millimetres. Do we have enough information to find its area? We do. Because we're told it's a square, which means every side is 9 millimetres long, we could label another side as 9 millimetres. To calculate the area, we simply multiply the two adjacent sides of the square. 9 multiplied by 9, and that is equal to 81. This time, our units of measure is millimetres, and because it's area, it's millimetres squared. Here we've got a rectangle, and we're given two sides, the length of two sides. Francesca says the area of the rectangle is 4 metres squared. Pause the video and have a think about why Francesca is incorrect. Francesca is incorrect with this rectangle because even though we know two sides, we know the opposite sides to each other. That won't help us find the area. We need to know the adjacent sides to each other. In other words, if we know one of the vertical sides, then we also need to know one of the horizontal sides. To find the area, we need to know the length and the width. We don't know the width of this rectangle, so we can't calculate the area. Here we have a situation where we're not asked to calculate the area because, look, it's given to us. We are told the area is 48 metres squared. This time we're asked to calculate a missing side. Let's think about what we already know about this rectangle. We know its area is 48 metres squared, and we know that one of its sides is 6 metres. So we can show that situation using this equation. Area is equal to 6 multiplied by, and that's the missing length, and that would be equal to 48. We can use our 6 times tables knowledge to know that 6 times 8 is equal to 48, and therefore the missing side is 8 metres. And to check, of course, we can simply multiply 6 times 8 and we should get the answer 48. Pause the video now and have a go at working out the missing length of this shape. We're told that we have a 6 centimetre length and we've got a missing length. The area is equal to 27 centimetres squared. Well, we know to calculate the area, we multiply two adjacent lengths. So we can write 3 times the missing length is equal to 27. We know that 3 times 9 is equal to 27. So therefore, the missing length of this rectangle is 9 centimetres. We're at the end of our maths tutorial today. Our learning objective was to be able to calculate area using multiplication. Awesome, Greg is back to remind us. Calculate the area of a rectangle or square by multiplying adjacent sides. And always remember, area is equal to units squared. So we can have metres squared, centimetres squared, and we've looked at millimetres squared. We write this with the little 2 to the right and above of the unit. You've had a go at completing a number of area challenges today, so now you are ready to go off and complete your independent task. As always, good luck!